Pop Magic for me is a natural branch off the tree of working with Deity. If someone was to ask me, say on the street, like, what's Pop Magic? I was going to work with the thing of being Marvel Thor, right? It's all the same thing. Like they're still getting praise from it because the idea was inspired by Thor. So you can work with him based on that. So and what I do actually is I have Funko Pops.
Oh
You know
yeah.
what Funko Pop is?
Yeah. The little
And I
dolls. Yeah.
use them. Yeah, yeah, I use them as representations of the deities.
Cool. Welcome to the Casual Temple. This week, my guest is Robert Peter, who is an English occultist, writer, and teacher based out of the UK. Robert has a Patreon and Etsy shop where he works with clients using deity pathworking and Catholic saint candle services, which we'll learn more about today. Thank you for your time, Robert, and happy to have you here.
No problem at all. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Um, so I guess we'll just kind of get started. The main question I generally ask is, what has your spiritual path looked like up until current day? I want to start there.
Um, if you can imagine various pots of paint all being opened at the same time, thrown together in a bowl, and mixed with a blender at various different speeds, that's probably the best way to describe it. But yeah, complete chaos, but good chaos, of course.
Good chaos. Was there an event or something early on in childhood that made you question kind of the nature of reality and that there's more than what you're being told kind of situation?
Not so much, not so much at all. It was kind of from the get-go that I had this viewpoint anyway. I had near-death experience when I was about 4 months old, I think it was, and saw spirits and interacted with them from like a very young age. So it was more the opposite of trying to interact with a world that, from my meager understanding, wasn't in touch with that side of things.
Mm.
So
Was there an example of sort of that juxtaposition where you were like, wow, I like you have like a really good um grasp on sort of the spiritual from a very, very young age? Was there something where it was really clear to you like the material world, the world that we're in now, and that was very different? Was there a particular event or
yeah, I guess when I was interacting with other people and telling them that I was like talking to spirits and stuff like that, that was the main one really. I mean, family members are more open to it, but when you start moving into an educational setting such as school, you learn very, very quickly that that's not how it goes. And there was even a couple of people in my class at school that had similar experiences, but at the threat of being dragged down by the majority perspective, they just kept silent about it. So yeah,
yeah.
it was more like you learn to shut up about it very quickly, basically, and just keep it to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So it sounds like your family that there it was more of an accepted thing. Were there certain family members that you talked about this with, um, or is it just the whole family was very comfortable with that?
so I never really opened up to many family members about it anyway. Like my mum was fairly open to it, and my nan was fairly open to it anyway. But there wasn't really like much conversation that happened about it. Like there was an acceptance of it,
Hmm,
but there wasn't much need to. So.
got it. I see. Would you say in your path, because it seemed again you were very young and sort of had this openness to the spiritual world or the other world or whatever you call it. But were there any role models on your journey that you followed, either it be books that you read or teachers that you were looking at that kind of helped you kind of work in both worlds, I guess?
Not really. Not at all up until I was about 23, and then I discovered the Theosophical Society.
Mm,
So like Matt Blavatsky, Charles Leadbeater, Annie Besant, and stuff like that. And they were the only people that I kind of not attached myself to, but they opened my eyes to other things out there. There's a book by Annie Besant and Charles Leadbeater, which is like thought, thought forms and the power of thought, I think it's called,
Yeah, I have that one.
which is one of I love that book
Yeah.
through and through, and it explained a lot of things that were happening for me. So
Hmm.
when I used to be in school, um, I used to do sort of like creative writing, shall we say, English literature,
Hmm.
and I would just go into trance, which I didn't know trance back then, and just come out with these like, profound scriptures, if you will, of happenings in other worlds and other things. You might
Yeah.
have looked at that and say, well, that's just a child's imagination, but I mean, if a child's imagination is basically seeing a rift between worlds and what you might call holy daemons or planetary intelligences all interacting and yeah, having a great tea party in the sky, shall we say, then yeah, then that's a pretty vivid imagination for a child that wasn't exposed to any of that. So,
Yeah. Yeah, the thing about the Thought Forms book by Annie Besant, just
yeah,
like literally just
I
forgot
think
it. Yeah. The artwork in there is pretty amazing. Like I really love art and especially abstract art, and I can kind of see the uh not the birth of it, but sort of how those two things kind of go together. Um, and just her explanation of sort of what those thought forms can just like look like from an art perspective is like pretty amazing. So I'm happy you brought that book up. So kind of flowing into that for you, I know what I know is like you kind of started out as in chaos magic.
yeah.
So can you explain what that is for folks who may be unaware of what chaos magic is?
So I guess the sort of popular belief is that you use belief as a tool to shape your reality. But yeah, for me, I kind of agree with that and I kind of don't. Because for some chaos magicians, it's more a case of like taking bits from here, taking bits from there, and seeing what works. Um, but for me, it's a bit more complex than that, and I don't really think I can do it any justice with an explanation because it is kind of one of those things you go to talk about, and then your mind just stops because there's so many things that are trying to get out at once, and they're all trying to explain themselves at the same time because they all want to be at the start, they all want to be at the middle, and they all want to be at the end. Um, so yeah, it's quite a difficult thing. I guess if I was going to try though, I'd just say it's the art of experimentation in the occult and seeing what works really, and just making that a part of your journey. But there was one thing on the lead up to the podcast that I experienced, and it was more you going out and seeing what works, but also being influenced by the divine and allowing the divine give you what works. So you might be on a strictly pagan path, and the next thing a saint might show up and be like, "Hey, come and work with me." And if you're on a pagan path and you might be adverse to working with the saint, you might have some roadblocks there to deal with. But it's having that trust on communicating with that spirit and seeing what it has to teach you. Because it might not always be cut and dry. What I've
Mm.
spoken about in line with this is syncretism. So a saint might actually be a cover for a pagan deity or a pagan spirit. So it's best to go with it, explore it, see what it actually is, rather than just taking it at face value. So
So is that sort of how you approach kind of your practice today and how chaos magic weaves in? Is you just kind of let these, I don't know what you call them, like energies or whatever wants to approach you, and you'll be open to working with them? Is that kind of what I understood?
no, I'll talk to them. If you kind of look at like your Instagram DMs, like everyone's gonna message you, but you might not always reply to them, or you might just be able to see through it straight away. If it's a trickster entity, then you might be like, well, you're a trickster entity, I'm not gonna like bother with you, and you banish them or bind them or whatever. If they're legit, then you'll talk to them and be open to seeing where that conversation goes. But yeah, actually, a great way to do it is to sort of vet them like you would a guest on a podcast. Like you wouldn't let everyone come on your podcast, would you?
Hmm.
So yeah, you make sure they're okay. And then work with them based on what's happening. But I think to immediately sort of like block them because they might be a trickster entity is a bad thing. You know, people closing yourself off to potential opportunities and potential growth because you might even grow from interacting with a trickster entity. The
Hmm.
trickster entity might come in, and then another deity might come in off the back of that and say, "Well, I actually sent you that to teach you how to deal with
Mm.
tricksters." So you always have to keep an open mind, I think.
Yeah. It's making me think again. We were chatting previously, and I know you work with your clients, and you were talking about how you would talk about banishing rituals
Mhm.
um, with your clients, and a lot of them, or not a lot, but some of them seem unfamiliar with what that is. And so, what made me think about that with what you're talking about trickster energies, because a lot of people who maybe start working with spirits or they get really freaked, me included, they get kind of freaked out when you say something like a trickster energy or something might be, there to like mess with you and not necessarily be helpful.
Mhm.
Um, do you consider using a um, banishing ritual to kind of keep the more like how would you use that in reference to the trickster energy, or would you use your deity relationship as more of the intermediary between that?
So you can use, I mean, I work with Mercury, like I work with material spirits it's just a standard, in communications, if you will. Um, so as a byproduct of that, you kind of are a trickster like yourself.
Hmm.
So there's always, always benefits in working with trickster energy because they can help highlight parts of your personality that, or parts of your sort of makeup, that are easily assailed, if you will, or that they can basically point out all the holes in your like theory or
Hmm.
what you're doing. You know what I mean? They're very, very good at like nitpicking. So
Right.
whenever you one benefit basically, yeah, one benefit of working with trickster energy is you go, okay, fine, and you let them pick all the holes in your armor. You let them say, well, this is what's wrong, this is what's wrong, and then you can say thank you, and then you go away, patch up all them holes, and then get rid of them. Like you use them to your advantage. Like just banishing them away straight away is I think is wrong.
Hmm.
Depending on what they are, of course, you're going to get tricksters that are a lot more how do I say it, aggressive than others, and
Right.
some that just kind of come in and do the damage. So
Hmm.
it's about being smart with it. Like if you're dealing with a trickster that is traditionally mercurial energy anyway, then if you outsmart the trickster, sometimes they're just like, well, okay, you're outsmarting me, cool. What did you get from that? Well, you're now more intelligent. So they benefited you. Yeah, they always benefit you. Sorry, like
Yeah.
there's never a bad thing to come from it as long as you're ready to do the work. If you're
Hmm.
going to sit there and like, kind of harass you, then you're going to feel like hard done by. But yeah, like in regards to banishing, yeah, to come back to it, yeah, definitely do banish them, but learn from them first. They're really, really good
Hmm.
teachers. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like the way you explained it is maybe in the beginning, like when you're new to it, like just banishing whatever. But as you go
Yeah.
along, it's probably a good tool to work with the trickster energy to kind of heighten what you're, I don't know, what you're focusing on.
I think I think though that it is really, really good to work with them from the get-go
Mm,
because from the get-go, you may or may not, depending on where you're beginning your path from, have things that you can improve on.
right.
So if someone's going to come along and give you a load of stuff to improve on,
Hmm.
then you're like, well, now I've got my work cut out for me. You know what I mean? Now you don't have to like do all your spiritual searching and go
Mm,
from one tradition to another trying to find yourself. The tricks is
hmm.
going to point out exactly where you need to go anyway. So in actuality, from the get-go, they're one of the best things that can approach you, I think.
Cool. That's a great perspective on trickster energy. Thank you. Um, so kind of looping into sorry, your current practice. I know part of it is something you call deity pathworking. Um, I don't know if it makes sense to describe just what pathworking is in general, or just describe your process of deity pathworking and what that looks like, whatever you want to start?
So when I work with deities with clients, a lot of it is just me challenging the deity. But if the client feels they're ready, or if the deity wants to meet the client like one on one without me being a middleman, then often they will give me a path working for a client, which is a series of suggestions. So you might do it like this, like a green meadow, a starlit sky, a tennis ball flying at superhuman speeds through that starlit sky. And basically, what it allows you to do is follow them along, and then you'll go and meet the deity in their home, if you will.
Hmm.
So, like their actual home or wherever you want to put it. And yeah, it allows you to just go and commune with deity one on one, basically, and then learn from them. Yeah, sorry, my mind just went blank then. Um, so yeah, it allows you to learn from them directly rather than coming to me, which is good, which is what I want anyway. I don't, not that I don't want to be a middleman, like not that I kind of abhor it in any way, but I think having that direct experience is always better than having someone speak for you. So,
Mm-hmm. Cool. It sounds like you're kind of introducing people to sort of the saints, and then like, cool, you guys know each other. How about you start working together? I like
yeah,
that.
basically, yeah.
Yeah, very cool. I like that approach. Um, so kind okay, so kind of, thank you for explaining sort of that. What are some main deities that or saints, sorry. So main saints that tend to come through? Is there certain ones that tend to pop up a lot for people, or is it just, pretty specific?
There's thousands of saints.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it all depends on where they're at on their pathway. Same with deity. It can be any deity from any pantheon. Um, yeah, any saint from any background. I've actually discovered quite a lot of saints through working with people that I'd never heard of before, and I'm like, oh, who are you? And then they're like, "Oh, I'm saying so and so," and I'm like, "All right, okay. So what are you here for?" And then they'll tell me, and then they'll connect through me, and then I kind of build a partial relationship with that saint based on the interaction. So
And so with the saint work you do, is it sort of a similar process to the deity working where you're sort of introducing somebody, or are you just doing the candle work, like a specific ritual for somebody?
so yeah, there's a lot of introduction that happens. A lot of it is more, I would say, it's akin to if you act as a medium for a client and you are channeling the spirit of the deceased um, for that client to then get a message over to them, etc. It's all communication, basically, if you're gonna put it down to bare bones form. Um, but they often do have magical interactions through ritual, if
Hmm.
you will, as well. So you might do like a novena for someone for health, etc., etc. So yeah.
Uh, so when you do a ritual so are you doing the candle magic ritual for your client? So I guess how the process works for your specific client, I guess, or how that functions.
Yeah, so we'll go through the situation and
Hmm.
if anything needs to happen, and then yeah, I'll do it remotely for the client. Yeah.
Okay. So you basically create like a candle associated to the saint and then kind of do your ritual. Um,
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. Why Catholic saints? I'm assuming it has something to do, maybe why they started coming into your practice. But why do you think Catholic saints started showing up for you?
I just think they're perfect for communication, if you will. Like they're very human. So they kind of bridge the gap between spirit, if you will, deity, and humanity, because their whole purpose of interacting with humanity after death, be it martyrdom or by natural causes, is to come back and aid the living. But it's different than if there's a, say, ancestor um, wants to work with you, like they've been imbued with what some would call the Holy Spirit or divinity, and they've been given purpose. Um, One of the sort of most recent cases of this, if you will, is a saint called Jesus Malverde. He's a Mexican folk saint who apparently, when he died, screamed out like, "God, let me help my people," or something along those lines. And then from that, he then came back and helped the
Oh,
impoverished, and yeah, and people suffering. So
oh, cool. Yeah, a lot of I guess a lot of personality to the saints, right? They
yeah,
have, like you said, I like how you
yeah.
explained that they're more kind of human and relatable than um that's a really good point.
It's not that deity aren't relatable, but if you say to someone, "Oh, like Zeus wants to work with you," they're like, "Oh, I don't know anything about Zeus." But if you say Saint Anthony of Padua wants to work with you, they can go and read about the life and times of Saint Anthony of Padua, create a point of connection with them, and yeah, it's just a lot easier, right? So
Yeah. I guess yeah, because Zeus seems like what Zeus? What? Like it's kind of kind of a big feels more big, I think. Yeah, that's a good point.
but
Um,
there's in regards to some of the African traditions,
hmm,
you have the Orisha, which wear the mask of the saints through syncretism. So you can actually connect with deity energy, if you will, through the guise of a saint. So it's
hmm,
almost like you go and talk to the assistant manager, and then they go and talk to the regional manager through that. But for the assistant manager and the regional manager, the same thing. It's like
hmm,
Jesus and God, right? Like you probably find it a lot more palatable to talk to Jesus than you would to talk to God, because God's this ineffable thing that controls everything, and Jesus is just this personification of him, if that makes
hmm.
sense.
Yeah. So if a client comes to you, do they already know that they want to work with either a deity or a saint, or is it something that you consult with them about first? I guess is a question.
Doesn't always happen.
Hmm.
Yeah, it doesn't always happen. When I didn't open up my services for deity or saint work, I would have a lot of deities coming through to clients. And it was almost the case of, look, you need to make people aware that you do this. So sometimes it's like ancestors come through, and if that's the case, that's what happens. If it's
Hmm.
an angel that comes, demon that comes through, if it's like anything that comes through, like I'm still that communication person. So I need to, yeah, I basically just need to do whatever wants to come and talk.
Hmm.
And however it wants to come across. Like I can't hold any judgment or sort of like predisposition towards certain traditions.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's I think when you tell people you work with saints, especially, they think that you're more pulled to like the Abrahamic
Right.
faith.
Hmm.
Um, but they don't really understand or take a step back and go, hang on a minute, hang on. Like he's got like a Santa Morte statue like on his table, or he's got like a Ganesha statue or a Thoth statue or something like that. So yeah.
Hmm. So it sounds like so if a client were to come to you, do they know like, oh, I would like you to do a saint service, or they
If
already
they
kind of
want to, yeah, yeah,
oh, okay.
I do have that available.
Hmm.
I have listings on my Etsy as well, and I do let people know that I do work with saints. But there has been a multitude of events where I haven't told people that I work with saints,
Mm.
and they've come up to me and been like, "Hey, I was really drawn to you. Um, God told me that you work with saints," and I was like, "Right, okay, here we
Wow.
go." Yeah, so yeah, and like in places where you wouldn't expect saints to show their faces
Hmm.
as well. So, and I'm not saying that saints like have a particular place or they're kind of like snobbish or whatever, but that traditionally you wouldn't expect people to go who work with saints, if that makes sense. Like and still work with other stuff. I mean, me as an example works with saints and works with other stuff, which is fine. So I
Hmm.
understand there are people out there that do so. But if you were to look at it from like, you know what I mean, just the sort of like base level viewpoint,
Yeah.
you would
Cool. So what are some interesting some because you mentioned like there's interesting venues that somebody might approach you? What is an interesting venue somebody approached you about working with saints?
So I do an event in England called the Satanic Flea Market,
Hmm.
and I think the last event I did, I'd say 11 out of 12 clients all had saints come through for them.
Wow,
Yeah.
pretty amazing. Yeah, I guess you wouldn't expect that at the satanic flea market for sure.
Yeah, 'cause that's what I mean, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So and it happened. I've done the event like a number of times now, and it's like happened quite a few times.
Mm,
And even when Saints they were there, but they were more on the periphery.
mm.
They started working with me like through events and stuff, and kind of started nudging me towards working with them anyway, in places where I wouldn't have considered it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow, cool. So I know you mentioned something about Pop Magick. So I was hoping you could explain that. I'm kind of vaguely familiar with it, so if you could explain that, that would be great.
So Pop Magic for me is a natural branch um off the tree of working with Deity. Anyway, so then if someone was to ask me, just say on the street, like, what's Pop Magic? I'd say, well, you work with Thor from you're like in your traditional methods. So you can work with Thor through the guise of him being in um like a Thor film. It's quite
Mm,
easy. Like you can work through the thing of being Marvel Thor, right?
yeah.
Like it's still the same thing. Um, like they're still getting praise from it because the idea was inspired by Thor. So you can work with him based on that. So you could, and what I do actually is I have Funko Pops.
Oh
You know
yeah.
what Funko Pop is?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
The little
and I
dolls. Yeah.
use them. Yeah, yeah, I use them as representations of the deities. So I
Cool.
have a Flash doll for Mercury and for Hermes, and then a multitude of others. There's also Moon Knight from Marvel,
Hmm.
which has Khonshu in it, which is
Yeah.
really good because getting a statue of Khonshu is really hard. So yeah, it's good though, but it allows you to sort of take the I guess if you call it like EBGBs or sort of like um nervousness out of contacting a deity because
Mm.
when I've done things for people, they're like, oh wow, like as you said, oh Zeus, wow, like
Yeah.
can't contact him, like, it's scary. But if you see a on-screen representation of Zeus in say Thor: Love and Thunder, then you're
Hmm.
like, oh, I'm just looking to that guy, and it gives you a face, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah,
So
totally.
through that, it's almost like an epithet, really, isn't it? Or through that energy. But
Yeah.
it also allows you to like, summon them in certain ways and work with them in certain ways. So if
Hmm.
Thor in if Zeus in Love and Thunder, liked a certain thing, then you would get him that as an offering.
Hmm.
And it's a form of chaos magic, really. But yeah, it just breaks things down in a way that the sort of entry level practitioner will be able to connects with the deity.
Hmm.
And you mentioned planetary magic, I believe. You can also contact planetary aspects through working with Pop Magic. So
Hmm.
if you're working with the Flash is Mercury, you can connect to that planetary energy. You have Zeus, Jupiter, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's really good. I love it. It's great.
Wow. Yeah, I like that. I like how you articulated that because it is, all those things are based off, quote unquote, based off of these older things, but it seems more, again, more friendly or like, oh yeah, I know that guy or whatever. Like, uh,
It doesn't just stop there though. Like you can connect with in the past I've connected with Mary Poppins. She was
mm-hmm.
great. She was amazing. Like if you look at Mary Poppins, she is a very, very helpful character to have on your
Right.
quote unquote spirit team, sorry. So yeah, you can connect with her to get stuff done, to get advice from. You can connect with like Indiana Jones, James Bond, like anyone in pop culture you can think of. It's not just limited to superheroes and that sort of stuff. But you can always attribute planetary energies to a said thing. So
Mm-hmm.
you could say Mary Poppins is a mix between Hokmah and Binar on the Tree of Life, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So it's really cool. If you get a tree of life and you want to make your own sort of like pop culture pantheon, then
Yeah.
you can basically say, I have Indiana Jones over here and James Bond over here and so on and so forth. So you could even get the cast of The Office and map them out on the tree of life and work with them through Pop Magic if you really wanted to.
Wow.
So
Yeah, I like that. It's very cool. Yeah, when you were saying Mary Poppins, for some reason I went to astrology and I was like, what astrological sign would, or one of
yeah,
the signs, I was like, Virgo. She seems like a Virgo.
yeah. It's cool though, isn't it? Like it's
Yeah,
cool
it
that
is cool.
you can jump straight to that and be like, oh, what's in that eighth house?
Yeah.
But the cool thing about it, through law, if you look up when Mary Poppins' birthday was, or like when Mickey Mouse's birthday was, you
Yeah.
can actually run birth charts on Mickey Mouse and you can work out his planetary like attributes and stuff like that. So
Wow.
yeah, yep.
That's
Because
very
they were
fun.
born in Philly, right?
Oh, I'm
So
sorry.
they were
Yeah.
born. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
wow. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's very fun. It seems like a very fun way of kind of interacting with these things. So that's very cool.
Mhm. But it comes back to as well one of the most popular ones is Superman. Obviously, Superman is a solar deity,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So he has his house on the sun, and you can work with him. Yeah, and planetary magic. Like if you don't want to get a statue of say Ra or Apollo or another sun deity, if you will, then you can get a statue of Superman and just use him as your representation.
Yeah.
Before we started, if you would have noticed when I was coming into this room, I had two Funko Pops that were in boxes still. One of them was the Flash that needed a new Flash, and the other one was a Raven from DC.
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know
yeah,
if you know,
yeah.
like
The
Teen Titans.
Yeah, Teen Titans. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And she's an extremely powerful sort of
Moon,
quote
maybe.
unquote practitioner. So
What do you associate Raven with? I just said moon, but like, what do you use
okay,
her?
yeah, she's very Luna, if you will, but I
Hmm.
don't know, she's all over the place. She has so many abilities that
That's true.
yeah, you could put her in any single one of them and she'd fit right in. So
Uh, yeah. Um, I'm looking over. I have different because I do the planetary magic and I have a Venus altar, and it seems kind of weird that I put her here, but gosh, now I'm blanking on her name. But the DC magician, Zatanna. Yeah,
I was just trying to
she's on my Venus altar. I know she seems like she could go on the Mercury altar, but she's like kind of a
no,
Venusian.
I would say she's more if I was gonna put her between either Venus, I don't know, I might even put her in Pluto.
Yeah, I don't have a Pluto altar. I have the main seven, but like Pluto altar is interesting. Hmm.
Yeah. Because she's great. She's
Yeah.
worked with John Constantine for a bit in
Hmm.
Pop Magic, and yeah, he's great as well.
Oh,
But
yeah.
prepare to take opportunity in smoking if you work with him because yeah, he gets you into bad habits, but also very good ones in regards to magical practice. So
Yeah. Well, I know there was a story that Alan Moore had of meeting John Constantine. I'm sure you're aware of that story,
yeah,
which is pretty cool.
yeah, no, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, if enough people are putting thought into him, then he could manifest, So
Yeah.
it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, that was fun. Thank you for going down the road of pop magic. It was extremely fun um,
So,
thinking through that. Now
yeah,
I'm
I
like, my
love
brain's firing
it.
of how I
Good.
could use it.
Good
Um,
reaction. That's a really good reaction. So,
yeah. So I know that you also do, and we even talked, you mentioned this beforehand, that you do, is it servitor talisman work or servitor work? Um,
yeah.
and can
Yeah.
you explain for folks that don't know what a servitor is, kind of what a servitor is?
Mhm. So, most common example is essentially creating a spirit for a specific purpose, using various forms of charging. So, in your case, you might use planetary energies to charge it. If you were the one to bring you wealth, you would use Jupiter energies, but also maybe a splicing of mercurial energies to go and get the word out that you
Hmm.
want to bring that to you. Yeah, it's basically using a bunch of different elements to create a spirit or a being. Um, sometimes using thought form technology as well, sometimes not. um, that basically just goes out into the world and gets stuff for you. You could make one that can go and get you a parking space, or can always get you a parking space. But you can also make them once again based off of deities, right? So
Hmm.
if you wanted to work with a deity, but you didn't want to work with the whole deity, you wanted to work with Anubis, you could make a servitor not called Anubis, but you could make it based on Anubis, if you will. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Uh, Very cool. Sorry, I was just taking a note there. That's very good.
Nice, fun.
Yeah, thanks for explaining servitors. How do you uh, work with your clients for servitors? I'm assuming uh, you create them for that, but how does that process work when someone approaches you to create a servitor for them?
Um, so sometimes if someone says, "Hey, look, I'm dealing with some energetic issues. I keep getting assailed by, say, tall forms. My workplace is really crappy, and Barbara on the fourth floor can't stop worrying about her rat problem, and it's just shooting off thought forms left, right, and center." I'll say, right, well, let's look at the situation. Would banishing Barbara out of her job be a good thing? No, because then she would lose her job. Would dealing with her rat problem be the right thing? No, because that's not your responsibility. Okay, so what can we do? Do you even want to like do a protection spell on you, or would you rather create a servitor that you can control basically whenever you want, and then if anything else comes up like this in your workplace, you can use it to protect you and to keep you energetically clean, so to speak.
Oh, cool. I like that process of like actually considering the target or whatever. That's
That's great.
very empathetic.
Yeah, because yeah, it's not Barbara's fault, is it? It's not
Right.
Barbara's fault. It's a rat problem.
Yeah. Um, oh, thanks. Yeah, that's a cool I like that process. It's a very like back and forth with your client. So that's very good.
Yeah. It's not like there's not an always, it's not like a one thing fits all with clients.
Mm,
Like you wouldn't just say like someone that just creates servitors might say, well, servitors for everything or deity for everything if they just work
hmm.
with deity. I think having a lot of tools in your toolkit allows you to connect with a lot of different clients. So
Very cool. So speaking of that, what is kind of your favorite client story to share? Obviously, no names or anything, but like something
yeah,
where you have one.
oh no. I'm trying to think.
Oh, or a recent one.
There's always so many though. It's like
Yeah.
like it's like at this point I'm opening like 20 file drawers at the same time. That's trying to go
Hmm.
through them all. Um, no, literally I've drawn a blank, like a flat out drawn blank. So
That's okay.
I literally can't think. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. There's so many that are interesting. There's hard to choose. Um,
yeah.
okay.
Mm, I guess there will always be my favorite is working with material energies and things like that. So
Mm. Hmm.
um, yeah, I discovered someone actually built a tulpa the other
Mm.
day accidentally.
Hmm.
So yeah, and then had to remove that. But it's the only one I can think um of late, really.
So they built their
But
own tulpa? Is that what?
yeah,
Oh,
accidentally.
accidentally.
Yeah. 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 I've seen it like a couple of times, but yeah, it is quite an impressive feat if you think of what a tulpa is.
Hmm.
Um, so it just goes to show that tulpas can be made through thought on something that
Hmm.
maybe you shouldn't have been thinking of.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, or just aimlessly piling thought into one area. I'm not saying that the person aimlessly piled thought into one area, but it was created quite strongly as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Huh, interesting. Because I know I had read about that tulpa. Whose book? Oh, Mark Stavish's book on egregores. He talked. There's
Oh,
like yeah, it's a great book. But he has that. I guess there's a famous tulpa story that he relates in there, where a woman had created a tulpa, or I can't remember what it was. It's based around some situation, but it started acting negatively in her life. um, and so, yeah, so it sounds like similar situations you've encountered with folks that you have to create, or what method did you use to help somebody in that situation?
Oh, I can't say.
Oh, okay, that's
uh,
okay. um, yeah, that seems like a scary sort of situation. And yeah, very fascinating. Is there okay, so are there any upcoming events or news that you want to share about what you're doing for folks that you'd like to communicate?
so I have a couple of projects on the go. I'm due to go to the next incarnation of the Satanic Flea Market, which is
Mm,
in London, 10th of December. Um, all details are on my Instagram page. Um, apart from that, not really. It's just more service creation for clients, more spell work, if you will.
mm,
And then yeah, I've got a project on the go at the moment, um, which will allow people to connect with my personal servitors, if you will,
mm.
um, which is quite cool. But apart from that, at the moment, it's very sort of like under wraps, not yeah, not saying too much about it. So
Yeah. I've had kind of interactions working with another magician she was offering up some of her own servitors to use. It's kind of interesting because like I've done servitor creation myself, and
yeah,
um it's a cool process because it's very creative. I enjoy it quite a bit, but it's interesting working with somebody else's creation that closely.
mm.
So very fascinating.
Yeah. If you think about it, there's like parts of their personality and stuff that goes into them. So
Yeah.
yeah. Also, you can even deduce that back to planetary influences in their
Hmm.
own chart and be able to work with it. So.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, thank you. So what is either like a personal motto or words of wisdom that you would like to share with the audience that gets you through that you like?
Actually, if I want to paraphrase a very, very cool magician, um, called Ramsey Dukes. I don't know if you're aware of
Mm-mm,
Ramsey Dukes.
mm-mm,
Um, so if he's got a few sort of like podcasts and things out there where he talks about his early days of magic, and there was a lot of people telling him that so and so wouldn't work and this wouldn't work, and he said, "Well, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna act as if it does work, and if it does work, then how do I think it would work?"
mm.
And then he got results, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So don't moving into the more sort of like law of attraction, sort of like new age spiritualism. Don't think that just this new age spiritualism or something else is not as serious as say like chaos magic, planetary magic. But yeah, act as if what you're doing is definitely going to work,
Mm,
and well, not act as if it's going to work. Act as if it's real, and then act accordingly. So and see what results you get, and then see where your path takes you.
cool. Yeah, I like that. Well, awesome. Where can people contact you to learn more about, excuse me, your practice and about you yourself?
So I kind of keep everything under wraps. I don't really like putting myself out there too much. I just kind of do what I do and then leave it at that. I try and keep things practical, if you will. So focus on the work rather than, you know what I mean? Like people sort of like getting to know you or whatever. I was like, no, let's do the
Mm,
work. Um, but on Instagram, mainly under RH Deity Specialist. I presume that there'll be a link somewhere in the description
oh yeah.
from it. But yeah, that's basically the only way to contact me as of now. I also have a Patreon, which is Sacred Heart Occult. I'll leave a link there as well for people. But yeah, they're the only two places. The Sacred Heart Occult Patreon was initially for saint work, only, but I always had it in the back of my mind that I was going to expand it more into Pop Magic and Chaos Magic. So there'll be a lot of that content being uploaded pretty soon. So yeah.
Very cool. Oh, very interesting things that you offer for people. Well, thanks, Robert. I appreciate your time today and sharing all the cool stories that you have.
That's all right. No problem.
Your support means the world to us. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please take a moment to like, comment, and share it with others who might find this content valuable. And of course, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay tuned for more enlightening discussions. Your engagement helps us grow, and we appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for being a part of the Casual Temple community.